everybody becomes like sort of this, sitting on your couch, like figuring out like why people behave the way they do, why crimes happen. Like they can solve the crime at home. Our show is a scripted show, obviously, but we're in the same vein where people get to learn why people do the things they do.
Well, it just is so great to get to talk to you again now that we're close to the new episodes dropping.
Yes.
Well, since we're coming up on the end of the season, what are you most excited about for fans to see, in these last few?
The big story that they've seen so far is like trying to figure out the mystery of what happened to Alec way back in the day, how he ended up with the burns, how he ended up with the scars. Like that's a big part of the story that gets played out by the end of the season. So I think our audience will be really excited to finally find out what happened and how it happened. And that's actually kind of a big twister. Like you can't believe that it happened the way that it happened. Of course, I'm not going to tell you like what happens, but
Understandable.
it's a big old mystery, and it's really interesting what actually happened.
Well, kind of looking back on the season as a whole, at the end of the day, Alec is a professor. So how do you think he feels about helping the police? Is this something he's doing out of obligation, or does he have a real passion for it?
I think he definitely has a passion for it. And like what I'm learning as an actor and like getting into this character as we go forward, I have played detectives before, obviously. And all of those, in those cases, it was more just the facts. You never went home with this guy. You never knew, how these cases affected him personally. In this case, with Alec, all of these things played personally, like everything's personal. And what I do love, and I hope that it becomes a staple in our show, is working through these cases, being the consultant, the behavioral psychologist. How that plays out in his personal life is a big deal to me, and how it plays out in the classroom is a big deal to me. Like how I can turn my work and my personal experiences into lessons. And I think that's something that our audience picks up on and like maybe loves. Like it becomes everybody gets to learn something, and I get to learn something every single week, every single day. And it comes from real great source material. Dan Ariely, who this character is loosely based on, but mostly the show is based on his work. I get to learn all these fantastic things. Like, there's a world where there's a huge audience for crime docuseries, right? Like everybody wants to figure out crimes. Like everybody becomes like sort of this, sitting on your couch, like figuring out like why people behave the way they do, why crimes happen. Like they can solve the crime at home. Our show is a scripted show, obviously, but we're in the same vein where people get to learn why people do the things they do. And I love that this is a character that I get to play now.
Ooh, well, touching on what you just said, do you think that the reason why Alec is so interested in solving these mysteries is because his own has not been solved?
Absolutely, for sure. What happened to Alec that so long ago in that church bombing literally catapulted him into this work. So there's a world where, even though it was a tragic situation, he's grateful that he went through this situation because it led him to the work that he does now. And how I put that out there to my students is a really big deal. And as an actor, I'm really hyped about it becoming these didactic moments where I get to teach. I think somewhere in my life, I probably wanted to be a teacher because it feels so natural for me to do it now. Like I love the moments where I get to teach in the show. And I'm hoping for many, many more moments where these cases not only solve themselves or I get to solve them, with all the characters that are involved, but how those cases become lessons is a big deal to me.
Well, we also learned a little bit about Marissa and Kylie's relationship in the last episode. We learned they were very important in one another's lives. Do you feel that Alec still wants them to maintain a relationship, kind of despite everything that he and his ex-wife have been through?
Absolutely. And it's funny that I get to do this now because, like I said before, I played these characters where you didn't really see them at home. You just saw the work that they did. But now I have all these interpersonal relationships that get to play out, you know, on a regular basis. And it's great work for an actor where you know how I work with my sister, how I work with my ex-wife, how I work with my new girlfriend, how these things play out in the midst of solving crimes, if you will, and being a procedural. Like, I get to go home, take my shoes off, and how that affects me, like the character, not me, uh, on a daily basis is way, way, way interesting to play as an actor. So
Yeah.
yes, all the personal relationships playing out is great fodder for me to work with.
On that note, I am curious, would you ever want Alec and his ex-wife to give their relationship another shot, or do you think they've kind of left it in a good place?
I think we left it in a good place. I love the idea that, like, we're still very much in each other's lives, but I do think there's a world where, she needs someone else and I need someone else. And like how we play those things together and being in each other's lives with other relationships is way more interesting to me than just getting back together. I think we should always have a thing for each other, but we never actually come back together with it.
Well, then where do you hope his relationship with Rose goes? It's still very early on, so I mean, we're not quite sure if they're compatible yet, but do you have any hope for that one?
I absolutely have a lot of hope for that because there's something to be played out where intellect is really sexy. She's an equal in a way when it comes to the work she does, the intellect she has. Like, I think it's a great space for Alec when it comes to romance because he's still hurt by leaving his marriage. He's still hurt by it. So the only way he's going to be in any sort of romantic situation is somebody who really intrigues him intellectually. And Rose is all that all day. Not to mention she's a fantastically beautiful woman and a really cool person personally. Like, Karen David is an absolute dream to work with. So the idea of like us getting into an intellectual space that becomes a relationship space is really interesting to me.
Thankfully, we know that we have a season two. So I'm
Yes.
curious if there are any storylines that you would like to see explored in the upcoming season that the show hasn't done yet.
Like we were just talking, I certainly am interested in what could happen with Rose. Is he able to hold down a real relationship outside of the marriage that he had? I'm really interested in how these cases play themselves out in the classroom. Like, I like the idea of personally being involved in these cases, helping solve these cases, but how that becomes a lesson in the classroom, because I think that's what makes our show quite interesting, like how it could become a lesson for each episode. I'm hoping that we do more of that, like get back into the classroom.
I'm not sure how early on you guys are in the process, but do you know when you might start shooting season two?
In March.
Oh, that's soon. I was expecting like June or something. Wow.
No, in March we're going back in.
That's awesome. Well, I have you. I mean, we have a lot of Flash fans, so I would love to just kind of get your feelings on how the Flash ended.
First of all, it was a great run, a fantastic run, and what I am really hyped about now is, first of all, Grant Gustin is probably one of the most talented people on the planet. And what Grant has been wanting to do forever was to get on stage. And God bless, he's now going to make his Broadway debut in Water for Elephants, which I cannot wait to see. And I can't wait to see what happens with all the other characters, like even in the further Arrowverse. Like, everybody's spread out and doing their thing. But I'm particularly interested in seeing Grant get his final joy to be on Broadway. Like, I can't wait to see that.
Oh, that's incredible. Do you still get to keep in contact with Grant and
Yeah.
Candace on the cast?
Yes. Those two in particular. Like, I talk to Candace almost every other day.
That's awesome. That's great news. Yeah, I was a big Flash fan myself, so it's always great to hear your thoughts.
Cheers.
Awesome. Well, that is all I have for you, Jesse. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you for having me.